On March 2nd, 2026, day 3 of the Iran war, the IRGC made an announcement that sent shockwaves across every intelligence agency in the world. Iran's Revolutionary Guards claimed they had fired K-bar ballistic missiles at 2 very specific targets. 1, the headquarters of the Israeli Air Force commander. 2, the office of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Israel said there were no injuries. Netanyahu's office called the claims fake news. And then, silence. No press conference. No public Netanyahu appearance for days. His government plane, the Wing of Zion, was spotted on the ground in Berlin. Viral posts with over 1.5 million views claimed Netanyahu had fled to a bunker in Germany. Iranian state media amplified claims that he had been killed or wounded. Social media exploded. So what actually happened? Where was Netanyahu? And why, in the middle of the biggest war Israel has ever fought, did everything go so quiet? Today, we are going to walk through the verified facts, separate them from the deliberate disinformation, and explain why Netanyahu's silence itself became a weapon in this war, and who was using it. To understand the Netanyahu story, you first need to understand what happened on February 28, 2026. At exactly 2:30 a.m. Eastern Time, Donald Trump released an 8-minute video statement on Truth Social. The United States and Israel had launched what they were calling Operation Roaring Lion, known on the American side as Epic Fury. It was the first time in history that Israel had fought in complete operational synchronization with the United States military. According to Israel Hayom, which had access to senior Israeli military sources, most Israeli Air Force pilots didn't even know until about a month before the operation that they'd be flying alongside American forces. It was that secret. The strikes targeted Iran's nuclear facilities at Natanz, its ballistic missile infrastructure, its air defense systems, and, according to multiple reports, the meeting location of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei himself, which Netanyahu had tipped off to Trump just days before the operation began. Khamenei was killed in the opening strikes. Within hours, Iran launched what it called Operation True Promise Fur, a massive multi-front retaliation that simultaneously targeted not just Israel, but 11 countries hosting American troops and bases across the Gulf. And Netanyahu? He convened his security cabinet that same Friday evening in a secret underground bunker. According to Channel 13 in Israel, citing official sources, several ministers and members of Israel's political leadership had been sleeping in secret underground locations since the operation began, in anticipation of Iranian missile strikes. That detail matters, because it sets the stage for everything that follows. On March 2nd, day 3 of the war, the IRGC issued a statement through Iran's Fars news agency. They claimed their K-bar missiles had struck 2 targets, the office of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the headquarters of the Israeli Air Force commander. The Israeli side responded quickly. Netanyahu's office said it was fake news. Israel confirmed the strikes had occurred in the general area, but stated there were no injuries. Here is where it gets complicated, and where the information war began in earnest. According to the Jerusalem Post, former U.S. Marine intelligence officer Scott Ritter appeared on a show called The Sanchez Effect and claimed, without evidence, that Iranian missiles had struck the homes of both Netanyahu and National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, and that Netanyahu's whereabouts were unknown. Those claims spread instantly. Iranian state media, including Tasnim news agency, which the U.S. Treasury has formally listed as linked to the IRGC, amplified the story. Xinhua, the Chinese state news agency, reported on March 2nd that residents near Netanyahu's office in Jerusalem saw no signs of any missile impact. Israeli fact-checkers confirmed this. But here's the thing. By the time the fact-checks ran, the damage to the information environment was already done. Millions of people had seen Netanyahu's whereabouts unknown, trending on social media. The IRGC had achieved something with 0 missiles. They had planted doubt. Defense Security Asia, one of the more analytically rigorous outlets covering this war, described the pattern accurately. In highly volatile geopolitical crises, unverified reports can acquire disproportionate influence because the absence of official information creates a vacuum that speculative narratives quickly fill. Iran knew this. That vacuum was the target. Then came the plane. Israel's official government aircraft, the Wing of Zion, was spotted on flight tracking apps landing in Berlin. One post, which collected over 1.5 million views on X within hours, claimed to have tracked Netanyahu himself to a bunker somewhere in Germany. A protest was organized in Berlin. Demonstrators demanded to know whether Netanyahu was on board. Some called on Germany, an ICC member state, to arrest Netanyahu under the international arrest warrant issued over alleged war crimes in Gaza. The story had everything. A real plane, a real flight, and a real international arrest warrant. All it was missing was Netanyahu actually being on the plane. According to Euronews, which investigated and debunked the claim, there is no evidence Netanyahu was on board. A picture posted by his own office showed him attending a security meeting at the Kiriya, Israel's defense ministry compound in Tel Aviv, the day after the plane landed in Berlin. His office released a photograph of him on the roof of a building at the Kiriya. A separate video posted on Monday showed him visiting the site of an Iranian missile strike in Beit Shemesh. Multiple Israeli outlets corroborated his presence there. A spokesperson for the German Foreign Ministry confirmed that the Israeli government had simply asked Berlin if they could park the plane there. Only the flight crew and the pilot were on board. And this wasn't unprecedented. During the June 2025 12-day war between Israel and Iran, the same aircraft, the Wing of Zion, had also been flown out of Israel just hours after the fighting began. The Israeli government routinely moves the plane out of Israeli airspace during active conflict, specifically because a grounded government aircraft would be a high-value target for Iranian missiles. The plane wasn't carrying Netanyahu. It was a precautionary move Israel had done before. But in the context of this war, with Iranian missiles landing near his office, with social media already full of rumors, the empty plane in Berlin became a story unto itself. Now here is the deeper question. Why did Netanyahu go quiet for days? The answer involves two things: genuine operational security and deliberate information management. On the operational security side, the logic is straightforward. The IRGC had publicly announced it was targeting Netanyahu's office. Iran had killed Khamenei in the opening strikes using intelligence about his meeting location, intelligence that, according to Axios, Netanyahu himself had provided to Trump just days before the operation. Iran's intelligence services had just witnessed what precise location information could do. They were trying to return the favor. Going quiet, issuing written statements instead of video appearances, moving between secure locations, avoiding predictable communication patterns, was exactly what any competent security service would advise. Israel's Shin Bet security agency was simultaneously deploying surveillance drones around Netanyahu's residence and providing armored vehicles to senior cabinet members. The security posture was real, but there is a second dimension here. Netanyahu's silence was also information management. On March 7th, his office released a formal written statement confirming he was alive, functional, and directing the war. That was the official record. According to the Jerusalem Post's fact check published March 10th, the Prime Minister's office also listed him as having visited an impact site in Beersheba on March 6th. These were deliberate, timed releases of proof-of-life information, enough to undercut the most serious claims without giving Iran a detailed location profile. The Israeli government understood something important. In an information war, you don't have to answer every rumor. You release verified proof at the moment it has maximum credibility impact, and let the rumors exhaust themselves. Netanyahu had been through this before. During the June 2025 conflict, questions about his whereabouts had also surfaced. He reappeared publicly when the military situation allowed it. The pattern was established. What makes this story more than just a fact check is what it reveals about how this war is actually being fought on multiple levels simultaneously. Iran lost its supreme leader in the first hours of this conflict. Khamenei, who had run the Islamic Republic for 35 years, was killed in what Israeli sources described as a strike that Netanyahu had been planning since at least November 2025, according to Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz. The IRGC, Iran's parliament, and Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian were suddenly operating under a three-man leadership council with no single clear authority. On March 8th, Ayatollah Khamenei, the supreme leader's son, described by analysts as more hardline than his father, was elected to replace him. Trump called the new leader a lightweight and threatened he would not last long without American approval. Israel said it would pursue every successor. In this environment, a decapitated Iranian leadership, a new untested supreme leader, and a war with no clear endpoint, the IRGC's information operations took on a specific function. They were not designed to deceive Western journalists. They were designed to project capability and reach to Iranian domestic audiences, to Gulf governments calculating their next moves, and to the Israeli public living under missile sirens. The claim that Netanyahu's bunker had been hit served multiple audiences simultaneously. It told Iranians, "We are striking at the heart of our enemy's leadership." It told Gulf states, "No one is safe, even the man directing this war." And it told the Israeli public, "Your prime minister is hiding underground while your cities absorb missiles." PBS NewsHour's reporting captured the broader dynamic accurately. Iranian President Pezeshkian publicly apologized to neighboring countries for the attacks on them. But hardline Judiciary Chief Gholam Hossein Mohseni-Ejei contradicted him on the same day, posting that attacks on countries whose geography was being used against Iran would continue. The rift between Iranian factions was itself being broadcast publicly, sending different signals to different audiences. The war, in other words, was being fought on three tracks simultaneously: military strikes, interceptor economics, and information operations. Netanyahu's silence, and the stories that filled that silence, was the information front of this conflict. So let's be precise about what the verified record shows. Netanyahu was alive and directing the war throughout the period when the rumors were circulating. His office released a statement on March 7th. He visited an Iranian missile strike site in Beersheba on March 6th, corroborated by multiple Israeli outlets. He visited another strike site in Beit Shemesh. He attended security meetings at the Kiriya with the IDF Chief of Staff and Mossad Director. He was not in Berlin. He was not in a German bunker. He was not killed or injured. His home had enhanced Shin Bet security, including surveillance drones, but had not been struck. The Iranian claims that his office was hit were confirmed only as strikes in the area, with Israel confirming no injuries. What is confirmed is that he was operating from secure, undisclosed locations, which is exactly what wartime security protocol requires for a head of government whose office has been targeted by ballistic missiles. His government plane was parked in Berlin as a precautionary measure, as it had been during the June 2025 war. The silence was not absence. It was security. Here is what the Netanyahu story actually tells us about this war. Iran has lost its supreme leader. Its military is fighting a coalition of the United States and Israel simultaneously. Its interceptors are being overwhelmed by American and Israeli air power. And yet, it is still managing to shape the information environment well enough that millions of people worldwide spent days believing that Netanyahu had fled to Germany or been killed in his bunker. That is not an accident. It is a deliberate capability, practiced, tested, and deployed with precision against an information ecosystem that rewards speed over accuracy. The antidote to it is the same thing it has always been. Verification, primary sources, official records, corroborated reporting from multiple independent outlets, not viral posts with 1.5 million views built on a flight tracking app and a second-hand claim from a former intelligence officer. Netanyahu's silence was filled by noise. That noise served Iran's strategic interests for several days, and by the time the fact checks ran, most people had already formed an impression they would not update. That pattern, more than any single missile strike, may be the most enduring weapon of this war. If you want to understand what is actually happening in this conflict, beyond the viral claims and the information operations, subscribe and stay with this channel. The verified picture is complicated enough without anyone adding fiction to it. I will see you in the next one.